Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, runner, forge, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my first ever D&D Beyond review, where I will look at the adventures and supplemental material at dndbeyond.com. With this video, I'll be reviewing the D&D Beyond adventure, Giants of the Star Forge, designed by Patrick Renie and James Wyatt for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has not been provided. I believe this adventure is still free to claim on D&D Beyond. If you enjoy the content, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. So I don't know if Wizards has done this before. They probably have, where they took a... Well, in fact, I know they did, because with Keys of the Golden Vault, I believe they released Prisoner 13 on D&D Beyond that folks could check out free, kind of separate from the main book. But this is a slightly different case, because Giants of the Star Forge is not actually in the upcoming book, Big B Presents Glory of the Giants. It is instead an original adventure created based off of tables and story ideas from Glory of the Giants, because Glory of the Giants is not an adventure book. It is instead a supplemental source book. And in fact, it even says in the design notes here that it used certain tables, like monster tables, treasure tables, the new stat blocks, and just a single story idea from the, was it Fire Giant skill table? A fire giant captures a renowned humanoid smith. That's the entire. So just based on that, the designers created an entire adventure and then released it for free on D&D Beyond. And I thought I would check it out and just see if it's actually any good. I will say at the very start, I actually really like this adventure. I think it's a great adventure, and I think it has a lot going for it because it's a level 16 adventure, which is awesome. We are so starved for content that's like beyond level 12, because almost every single 5e book is, 1 through 11, maybe occasionally gets up there to like 12 or 13, but there's so little content, official released content for higher levels, because a lot of campaigns, I guess, just don't get that far, reach that far, which unfortunately leaves a lot of DMs scrambling to have to create that content or go to, like the DM's Guild and try to find some third-party content, a lot of which is very, very good. Check out my DM's Guild review series. This one, however, is also really good. I do balk at the fact that it says this is a 3 or 4 hour session. I mean, the boss battle alone is going to take you 90 minutes at least. We're level 16, folks. There's not going to be a quick battle here. I guess a wizard could cast, Force Cage and just kind of cheese a battle that way. But still, yes, it's designed to be a singular kind of shorter adventure. This is not like Lost Mine of Fendelver or something. This is more like what you would get with an anthology book. Maybe a little bit longer than that, because a lot of the anthology books tend to be like one dungeon location. In this one, it does feature a dungeon location, but it's got a slightly other thing right in front of it, which I will go over because it's a pretty short little adventure. So as I mentioned, this is a 16th level adventure. The plot is that a fire giant forge caller named Bermskarda has kidnapped a smith from a town, a renowned humanoid smith, in order to complete her magnum opus. She has recently fallen in the giant ordning, fallen from her station, so kind of disgraced. And with the help of this, which I guess you have to swallow your pride quite a bit, with the help of this human smith, she can complete her master project, which is this. It's kind of vaguely described, but it reminds me of the maybe the destroyer from the first Thor movie, or some kind of big hulking like humanoid colossus thing that's got whatever powers. But it's very much a MacGuffin. Like, it's not really technically involved in the adventure very much. But anyway, the plot is it's a rescue mission. You got to go rescue this poor dude. There are some adventure hooks that are offered. Most of them just involved, hey, you want to go rescue this person. But if you're into the environmental thing, then because of the fire giant's work in this location, it is turning this lake into an acid lake. So I really appreciate, because a lot of folks with fire giants, they got to go lava, they got to go, volcanic and fire and all that, because that's their whole, they're immune to fire, so that's a huge advantage for them. And this one doesn't actually feature that, which is nice. It does feature an acid lake instead. The forge, the titular Star Forge, is a crashed meteor that happened eons ago, and has been transformed into this forge that people can work on and use this kind of brilliant, awesome energy. So literally the location is like a meteor that has been hollowed out in the side of a mountain. So the first thing you do is you make your way up the mountain, and halfway through, you reach the Fireside Monastery, which is home to Furbolg Giant Wrestlers. And the Furbolg Wanderer stat block is a new one, which this adventure does a wonderful job of showcasing some of the new monster stat blocks from Glory of the Giants, and we'll get into some of those as we get there. But I think that was a big idea here is, hey, we want you to use obviously as much content as you can from the book, and I am really stoked about some of the monster stat block I'm seeing. Just really, really fun ideas, and looked like they were enjoyable to run and actually had different things they could do. You don't really need to run the Furbolg Wanderers, though, because they are not hostile. Instead, they are wanting to entreat with the party. You can talk to their leader, Diasma, and get some information, like you get the plot about the Bermskarda and what's going on. I guess you got some maybe beginner plot from the initial quest giver as well, who's like the Smith's nephew or something. But you get more information about the acidic lake, which is wreaking havoc in the environment. You also get a very important plot detail that this Starforge area was the lair of an adult red dragon named Akenverd, and now the fire giants have taken it over, but they have not slain Akenverd, which is a very cool idea that was one of my favorite elements of this adventure, and we'll get into that in a moment. Completely optionally, the party can engage in a bunch of fun mini games, basically, almost like, I don't know, Zelda-like or something, before they go up to the actual lair. It is completely optional. Your mileage may vary on if your players like this kind of thing or not. And maybe they sometimes do, maybe they sometimes don't. It just kind of depends on how the table's feeling. But I think they're pretty fun, and they give you a chance to earn some potions, as well as to earn the alliance of some of the Furbolgs can actually maybe come with you, and you can employ them, kind of like minions or something. The different mini games involve rope climbing, and halfway through they will pour boiling oil down the rope to make it a little more challenging. Again, we're level 16, and it does say that you can use magic and things, so it's not like, oh, you can't use this, so the spellcasters can't do anything. It says using magic and other supernatural abilities is not only allowed but expected. So it's like, hey, we're high level now, use whatever you got, but there's certain, you're not supposed to let go of the rope. So even though maybe you could fly your way up, you're still holding onto the rope, and then we're going to pour boiling hot oil on there, so you have to deal with that. Another one is you have to carry a boulder across a lava field, and halfway through there will be an avalanche, which actually kind of helps you if you can avoid the boulders. And the other one is you get magic mud encased on you, and you're supposed to sit serenely beneath a waterfall, which involves a wisdom save. But if you fail that, then you have to make a strength save against the massive amounts of water crashing down. So I really enjoy the opportunity to do some of this kind of thing where there's not really an element of danger. Instead, it's just a competition, just kind of a fun little series of games to play as you make your way up to the more serious layer dungeon. So I thumbs up on that. I think it's pretty fun. The actual Starforge dungeon, as I mentioned, is in the kind of meteor crater in this mountain. And the first thing you see on the crater rim are a bunch of fire giants basically keeping this adult red dragon at bay, which I don't exactly know if you wanted to put that in a simulator, like who would win that battle, but the fire giants would technically have a pretty good edge because the dragon's main tool is the fire breath, and of course the fire giants are immune to that. You can sneak past them. You can use the Furbolgs to, just hold them off, and then they have to deal with that and get past them, or obviously you can fight everybody. You can also try to talk to Ekenverd, because technically you would be a little bit of an enemy of my enemy is my friend element, which I think is always fun in D&D when you get to talk to, monstrous creatures. Ekenverd is, of course, the biggest asshole of a red dragon. He's very vain and proud and will not, stand any kind of slights or insults or anything, so the players have to play it very carefully if they want his aid, or if not, he can fuck off and leave, or he can swoop in and help them at some point. It's a wonderful tool for the DMs to have, and I absolutely love it. Even if you ignore it and sneak past him, you can still bring in the dragon later on. It's just having a red dragon in your back pocket as a DM for the rest of this adventure is really, really great, and hopefully the players can work with that in some way, and he can show up near the end for some more hijinks. So the actual dungeon map is pretty much my only complaint of this adventure. If you've watched my reviews before, you know how much I love great map art. I primarily play on a virtual tabletop, and I'm just not a big fan of the Dyson Logos style very much. Actually, I'm not even sure this is Dyson Logos. I don't know. I say that, but I'm not quite sure if that's the case. But it's a black and white map regardless. It kind of looks like the kind of map you would get in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. I think had this same map art. I think it was Journeys. Was it Journeys Radiant Citadel that had this art? Some other ones that maybe Candlekeep Mysteries. But there were a lot of books they've released that just don't have the nice full color map art, and that's a big bummer. It's a huge thumbs down for me in terms of being able to use this. It does come with a player version, but it's that same style, so I'd have to use. Hopefully, there's somebody out there who has created a basically better version of this map. The other kind of complaint I have, and this is a problem with a lot of giant maps, is because they're giant maps, right? Like, they're so big. Look at the individual square sizes, and I get it, like, giants obviously would hang out at bigger areas, so I get the disconnect there, but it still makes it very tricky to actually explore in a virtual tabletop space where the players are actually moving their tokens around. And in this case, a lot of this is empty space, which, you know, I get having a big crater here and a meteor, and you want that big space, but most of, like, 90% of this is actually empty. I don't know if you can quite see the numbers from here, but the actual stuff where there is content is the broken bridge here at the bottom at 1, where they will most likely appear at if they're taking the switchback back and forth and not just falling their ass down the crater. And then they go towards this middle island. In the middle, there's one area where they can fight some, what are they called, cinder giants or something, and get some rings of acid resistance, which is very helpful because it's a giant acid lake. But otherwise, all the other locations around are completely empty. And it says they look basically similar to Area 3, but there's just nothing there. So it's a little bit big and a little bit empty. It's a slight ding for me, a slight thumbs down. Mainly the map art in general. I just really wish it had some color on there. That would have helped things a lot. But yeah, it's otherwise the actual content is wonderful, however, which is certainly an important part of that. There's air or acid elementals, which just use the air elemental stat block but have acid damage. This whole place, by the way, let's see, where does it describe it? I guess it's under the acid lake. There we go. A creature that starts its turn within 10 feet of the water's edge or anywhere in the air within 100 feet above the water must make a DC 15 con save or taking 66 acid damage on a failed save or half as much on a successful one. And if you actually submerge yourself in the acid water, it's 12d6 acid damage. That's almost, I forget what lava is, but that's more, I think it's more challenging and more interesting because of the fumes. Suddenly you have to be over 100 feet above the water to not have to make this save. And anytime we're even near the water's edge, which I don't think lava has that kind of kicker. So that's really cool. Now, granted, level 16, they'll probably have a lot of different abilities that can, you know, protect them from gases and things. But still, that's an added level of challenge that I appreciate that you kind of have to do with higher level play to give them, you know, cause to use some of their items or abilities or just have to make these saving throws. So that's something that you have to keep in mind the whole time they're here. Once they get anywhere near, you know, and obviously the island in the middle is going to force them to cross it at some point. I just think that's a really cool addition that makes it even more interesting than a lava field. Cinder Hulks is what it's called when they're in number 3, which is a cool new stat block where they're kind of these poison. And I'll show you the creatures when we get down there, but they're almost like you could use these as like volcanic monsters as well. Rings of acid resistance would be super helpful, though, which is cool that these two creatures are using that because that makes sense why they're in that one area. Then you basically have a mini boss fight followed by a boss fight using these new stat blocks. The island path is guarded by Brimskarda's sister Zolm, who is a fire giant of evil fire, which is a funny name for a creature, which just has some really cool fire powers, including I kind of like a hex bolt. But for fire, I guess. We'll call that a firebolt then, Eric, you dumbass. That's a total thing. With 2 salamanders, and literally just none shall pass, and it's a big battle here. There's a little bit of a side thing that, or maybe it's a main thing if the player's got the quest for it, where they can find an intact runestone in Area 3, or they can try to just repair the broken runestone in Area 5 in order to basically fix the entire acid lake. So the reason it's been transformed into acid is because the star energy is like leaking into it, which normally would be protected by those runestones, but because the runestones have been damaged by the fire giant, or one of them has, that gives cause for the players to try to repair it. If they do repair it, or they replace it with the treasure they found in Area 3, then the acid lake water damage is halved, and then after a number of days, it finally becomes safe to drink. So it doesn't magically just dissipate. It does take some time, but that's a big one. If, however, they fail the check, which does involve a DC 15 dex save using Mason's tools with a sleight of hand skill, then it gets worse. More acid seeps from the star, and any acid damage dealt by the acidic lake is doubled. Nice. I do like the consequence of failure right there. And then finally, we have the big boss battle against the Fire Giant Forge Caller, which I will jump down to look at this particular creature. Actually, I think it's probably easier just to go down to the appendix. There we go. So you can see the Cinder Hulk. It looks like a really cool... I mean, you could use it as a cool volcano creature, I think. Just has some neat abilities there. The Furbog Wanderer, which we don't really need the stat block for, but it's kind of nice to have. The Forge Caller is the sister. This one has... the Fire Giant of Eo Fire is the sister. This one has the Scepter and the Bolt of Imix, which is a ranged spell attack that can add a Frightened ability on it. It gives you a Scepter to, like, see people who are invisible. The Forge Caller is your big bad boss. This is Bermskarda. This is your CR 18, huge saves, 300 hit points, AC of 18, legendary resistance. Does not have legendary actions, which I feel is kind of odd for that level. I would almost give everybody legendary actions. However, she does have very cool actions. She can make 3 Forge Hammer attacks, all of which can also cause the heat metal, I guess only once per turn, but so one of the Forge Hammer attacks, whether they hit or miss, so it's not a separate action, can basically do the heat metal ability in an AoE attack, which is awesome to have that be not a separate action, but just part of the ability. She does have a ranged attack with heated rocks. She can unleash a cone of magma, which also restrains people, which is, because you have to weigh the fact against 3 Forge Hammer attacks, but that one, okay, that might be worth doing. And then as a bonus action, she can basically give herself half cover by just billowing out like this smoke and stuff. So I still feel like maybe legendary actions might have been required here, just to try to break it up a little bit and make you do more things, because I don't remember if she has any minions with her is the only thing. I know the other mini-boss did have minions, but I think that's a really cool stat block and has a lot of fun things going on there. It's a lot of fighting if you notice, though. I mean, there's the whole big challenge of the Acid Lake, and then it's a bunch of these big... combat. Yeah, it's just her alone, so that is a little bit worrisome. The actual furnace has additional conditions where it's leaking like fire damage and can blind people. You're supposed to free Theldon, although you could probably do that after the battle, I would think. He's like literally chained up to the anvil. And then there's another little bit where the smith, the human smith, request that you destroy the work they've been working on, because it's this big, dangerous, war machine of mass destruction. And this is where I would have the dragon show up. Obviously, you can have the dragon show up anytime to bail the players out or just create more problems or something. But here is where I think I would have the dragon show up, assuming the players hasn't already killed him. And he would be like, no, this is mine. I'm going to claim this as my trophy. And then it becomes an awkward, like, oh no, do we fuck with the dragon after we just had these big battles? Or... do we just leave him with there and maybe not get as good of a reward from our smith? I just love having the dragon in my back pocket and being able to use that in different ways and have that kind of optional element in the adventure is really, really fun. So I think it's got a lot of good stuff going on. I mean, it's not really that complicated, of a story. You just go in, it's a rescue mission, it's in a memorable, dangerous, exotic location, which I think makes it memorable and feels appropriately challenging for 16th level player characters, and does a good job of showing off all the new creatures from Glory of the Giants. So I think it's pretty much a thumbs up from me. Let's go over my pros and cons, which I kind of just did, for Giants of the Starforge. Pro, it's a memorable adventure location. The fact that it's in this meteor that's crashed into a mountain that's been transformed into a forge. It's kind of half ruins. It's filled with these unique, elementals and giant creatures, and the players have to deal with all of that is automatically interesting to me. And the fact that they didn't just fall back on the usual, well, fire giants are in a volcano or in, a lava field or something going on. I think that's really interesting. Pro, awesome new giant stat blocks. These are all really interesting and actually make me pretty hyped for Glory of the Giants. I mean, every single one of these is just interesting and awesome, and is more interesting than a standard giant because they have more things they can do on their turns. They have more, interesting ranged attacks, or, extra. These all have like different death burst explosions that can happen, which is something the players never expect, which could be very fun. So I appreciate the use of all these creatures, and they seem to be very, very interesting creatures. And thankfully, obviously, we got those stat blocks here, so you could technically run this whole adventure, and you don't need to own Glory of the Giants. And Pro, the Red Dragon is a fun wild card for the DM. That's one of my favorite story elements here. The fact that you can meet this dragon, you get the information about the dragon, you see the dragon early on. There's all kinds of ways you can choose to deal with this dragon. You can sneak past him, you can parlay with him, you can help him defeat those giants. And then no matter what you do, the dragon could leave or he could come with you. There's just so many cool options that provides the players with a lot of choice on how to handle that situation. There's always a risk there because they'll have to make skill checks, and the dragon, even though they're aligned, he's also just a huge imperious asshole, which players, personalities clash typically a lot with that kind of personality, and it's just a fun element for the DM to use. So huge thumbs up on throwing in a red dragon involved in the whole thing. My only con is the map art, as we looked at. It's very large, which that's less of a problem because I do feel for the fact that it's supposed to be a giant thing, and it does kind of make it more interesting to have this large playing field that the players have to, get through. I would probably, if I were literally using as a VTT, I would maybe even knock off this entire upper area a little bit. I don't know. That's a minor complaint. The bigger complaint is the lack of color, though, and I just, this is... You're Wizards of the fucking Coast. You should have the best map art quality. It's astonishing to me that this is something I have to complain about. Oh, it does say Dyson logos up there. Okay, there we go. I missed that the whole time. Somebody has already made the comment on YouTube. Yes, Eric, it was Dyson logos. So again, I don't want to personally rag on the artist or anything. It's the actual detail and everything looks fine. It's just a shame that it has the lack of color, and that was a choice not that the artist necessarily made, but that Wizards made in terms of hey, we're going to give you this much for this much work, and this is what we require. So I think that's a bummer for something that should be an official release. I think that should be the best quality map art, and to me this is just not quite there. It's lacking in that department and makes it so I have to take additional steps to run this in a virtual tabletop. Which is also a bummer. And, Wizards, what happens when you get your virtual tabletop going and integrate D&D Beyond in there? Are we expected to play on this map, or are you going to give us some better, 3D Unreal Engine maps? I guess that remains to be seen. Final verdict. A 16th level one-shot is a rare treat, and Giants of the Starforge provides a compelling adventure with suitably awesome creatures and a challenging location worthy of Tier 3 play. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com, and you can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brandon, Genocider, David, Eclectic, Roleplay, Roll, Christopher, Brian, Corey, Koa1337, Big Nut, John, Scott, Eric, Tyler, Nathan, Camp, Crystal Lake Counselor, Andrew, Daryl, the Reldoran, Matt, Captain Woody79, Jaren, Matthew, Argius, and Stephanie. And a gold patrons, RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Lumpy Spuds, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, Scott, Rufus, Carolyn, William, Jerry, Thomas, and Prophet. Thank you all very much for your support.